Throughout automotive history, engineers and companies have sometimes produced vehicles that leave us wondering what they were thinking. These cars are remembered not for innovation or success, but for questionable ideas, poor execution, or simply being ahead of no one's time. Some were plagued by constant mechanical failures, turning the dream of affordable transportation into endless repair bills. Others suffered from bizarre styling choices, where awkward proportions or strange features made them look more like jokes than serious machines. Safety has also been a recurring issue, with certain vehicles gaining notoriety for dangerous designs that put drivers at risk. And then there are those that tried to combine categories nobody asked for, creating awkward hybrids that satisfied neither purpose. While these cars are often mocked today, they also serve as lessons. They remind us that progress in design and technology is really a straight path, and even failures can shape the future. Subscribe and stay tuned. Number 7. The Ford Pinto is one of the most talked about and controversial cars in American history. It was built by the Ford Motor Company between 1971 and 1980, and it was designed to compete with small cars from Japan and Europe, which were becoming more popular in the United States. At that time, American consumers were beginning to demand cars that were lighter, cheaper, and more fuel efficient. Ford, which was known mostly for large vehicles, needed to respond quickly, and the Pinto was their answer. What made the Pinto unusual was the speed of its development. Normally, designing a new car from the ground up took at least 3 or 4 years, but Ford wanted to release the Pinto in just over 2 years, which was considered extremely fast. The company wanted to make sure they didn't lose market share to foreign competitors. This decision to rush the process was critical, because while it allowed Ford to get a car on the road quickly, it also meant that some important safety checks were skipped or ignored. The most infamous problem with the Pinto was its fuel tank design. The fuel tank was located very close to the rear bumper, and the structure around it was weak. This meant that if another car hit the Pinto from behind, even at relatively low speeds, the tank could rupture. In some cases, gasoline would spill out and could ignite, leading to dangerous fires. While not every crash led to such an outcome, there were enough incidents to raise alarm among engineers, safety experts, and eventually the public. The controversy became even greater when internal Ford documents were revealed. These documents showed that Ford had actually studied the problem and knew about the risks. They even calculated the potential number of deaths and injuries compared to the cost of fixing the design. A stronger fuel tank or extra protective parts would have cost about $11 per vehicle, but Ford concluded that paying settlements in the event of accidents would be cheaper than recalling and redesigning the car. When this information became public, it caused outrage because it appeared that Ford had put profit ahead of human life. The Pinto case had a huge impact on public trust in corporations. It became a symbol of what can go wrong when a company values cost savings more than customer safety. Their story was covered widely in the media, and it influenced debates about business ethics, corporate responsibility, and government regulation. Number 6. The AMC Gremlin is one of the most distinctive and unusual cars in American automotive history. Produced by American Motors Corporation between 1970 and 1978, the Gremlin was AMC's bold entry into the subcompact car market. At that time, American car buyers were starting to look for smaller, more fuel-efficient vehicles, and foreign companies such as Volkswagen, Toyota, and Honda were beginning to capture attention in the United States. American Motors, which was always the smallest of the major American car makers, could not compete with Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler in terms of size and resources. But AMC had a reputation for creativity and for taking risks, and the Gremlin was one of its most daring experiments. The Gremlin made its public debut on April 1st, 1970, April Fool's Day, which many people thought was appropriate given its strange and controversial design. Instead of developing a completely new car, AMC decided to save money and time by shortening the body of the AMC Hornet. This decision gave the Gremlin its famous shape, a long hood combined with a very short rear end. Some people thought the car looked like it had been cut in half, while others liked its unique appearance. The design was polarizing, but in the crowded car market of the 1970s, it made the Gremlin instantly recognizable. AMC marketed the Gremlin as a fun, affordable car for young drivers, college students, and families who wanted a second vehicle. It was smaller and cheaper than most American cars at the time, which made it attractive to buyers looking for something practical. The Gremlin was also one of the first American subcompact cars, arriving even before the Ford Pinto and the Chevrolet Vega. In this way, AMC showed that it could act quickly and even get ahead of the competition, despite its limited budget and staff. The car came with different engine options, ranging from economical 4-cylinder engines to 6-cylinder versions and even a V8. This was unusual for such a small car and gave the Gremlin a surprising amount of power for buyers who wanted more performance. However, the car was not perfect. Its build quality was inconsistent, the interior was basic, and rust was a common problem. Still, its affordability and its individuality made it appealing to many. The 1970s oil crisis also helped the Gremlin. When gasoline prices rose sharply, American drivers became more interested in smaller, fuel-efficient cars. The Gremlin fit that need, and it sold reasonably well. By the time production ended in 1978, AMC had sold more than 670,000 Gremlins, which was an impressive achievement for a company of AMC's size. Beyond sales, the Gremlin became part of American popular culture. Its unusual shape made it the subject of jokes, but it also gave the car personality. For many people, the Gremlin represented independence and a break from the large traditional sedans that had dominated American roads for decades. Over time, what was once mocked as unattractive began to be appreciated as quirky and distinctive. Today, the AMC Gremlin is considered a collector's item. Classic car fans admire it not only for its rarity, but also for what it represents: creativity in the face of competition. It has a cult following among enthusiasts who celebrate its unique look and its place in history. While it was never the most refined or reliable car, it stands as a symbol of AMC's determination to survive against much larger rivals. In the end, the AMC Gremlin is remembered less for its technical specifications and more for its spirit. It showed that even a small company can make a big impact with bold ideas. Whether people loved it or laughed at it, they remembered it, and that is why the Gremlin continues to be part of conversations about American cars of the 1970s. Like the Ford Pinto, it has become more than just a car, it has become a story, and one that continues to fascinate enthusiasts today.
Number 5. The AMC Pacer is one of the most distinctive and memorable cars ever produced by the American Motors Corporation. Built between 1975 and 1980, the Pacer was a bold and unusual experiment in automotive design. At a time when most American cars followed traditional patterns, the Pacer stood out with its rounded shape, white body, and especially its enormous glass area. In fact, more than 1/3 of the car's surface was glass, which gave it a unique bubble-like appearance. Because of this, the Pacer earned the nickname the Flying Fishbowl. AMC's idea was to create a car that was small on the outside but spacious on the inside. The company hoped to design what they called the first wide, small car. Unlike most compact cars, which were narrow and often cramped, the Pacer had the width of a large American sedan, but the length of a subcompact. This gave passengers an unusual amount of comfort for a small car and made the Pacer feel different from anything else on the market. The design of the Pacer was futuristic, but it was also polarizing. Some buyers appreciated its originality and modern look, while others thought it looked strange, even cartoonish. Its asymmetrical doors added to the oddness. The passenger door was longer than the driver's door, making it easier for people to get into the back seat. This was a clever idea, but it also made the car seem even more unconventional. When the Pacer was launched in 1975, AMC expected it to be a hit. The company even planned for it to use a lightweight rotary engine, which would have been advanced for the time. However, that engine never materialized because of development problems, so AMC had to fit the Pacer with heavier and less efficient traditional engines. This meant the car did not deliver the kind of fuel economy buyers were expecting during the energy crisis of the 1970s, when gasoline prices were rising sharply. Despite this setback, the Pacer sold well in its first year, with more than 145,000 units delivered. People were curious about it, and its radical design drew attention in showrooms. but sales quickly declined after that. By the late 1970s, competition from more practical and efficient small cars, especially Japanese imports, made the Pacer less attractive. Its weight, average gas mileage, and unusual styling became weaknesses in a market that was becoming more focused on efficiency and affordability. Even so, the Pacer achieved something that many cars never do. It became a cultural icon. Its unusual look made it appear in films, television shows, and even cartoons. Perhaps the most famous example was its role in the 1990s comedy Wayne's World, where the Pacer, painted light blue with flames on the side, became almost as memorable as the characters themselves. This pop culture presence gave the car a second life as a symbol of retro coolness. Today, the AMC Pacer is remembered with a mixture of nostalgia and amusement. Collectors appreciate its rarity and its boldness, while casual fans often smile at its odd fishbowl-like design. It represents the willingness of AMC to take risks and to create something that truly stood out, even if it was not a long-term commercial success. In the end, the Pacer demonstrates both the strengths and the weaknesses of American Motors as a company. It was imaginative, original, and daring, but also limited by the company's financial and technical constraints. Although production ended in 1980 and fewer than 300,000 were built, the AMC Pacer continues to fascinate car enthusiasts and remains one of the most instantly recognizable vehicles of the 1970s. Its story shows that sometimes the most unconventional ideas, even if they fail in the marketplace, can leave the deepest impression on history. Number 4.
The Chevrolet SSR, short for Super Sport Roadster, is one of the most unusual vehicles ever produced by General Motors. Built between 2003 and 2006, the SSR was a retro-style pickup truck with the heart of a muscle car. At first glance, it looked like a mix of a hot rod, a convertible, and a pickup, something that had never been seen on American roads before. The SSR was Chevrolet's attempt to combine nostalgia for classic design with modern performance and technology. The idea behind the SSR came at a time when retro-inspired cars were gaining popularity in the United States. The Volkswagen New Beetle, the Chrysler PT Cruiser, and later the Ford Thunderbird all proved that buyers were interested in vehicles that combined modern features with designs inspired by the past. Chevrolet wanted to create something different, and so the SSR was born. Its styling was influenced by Chevrolet pickup trucks from the late 1940s and early 1950s, with rounded fenders, a bold grille, and a curving body shape. But unlike those old trucks, the SSR featured a power retractable hardtop, making it the first convertible pickup truck sold by a major manufacturer. Underneath its retro body, the SSR was built on the same platform as the Chevrolet Trailblazer SUV, which gave it strength but also made it heavier than expected. When it was first released in 2003, it came with a 5.3-liter V8 engine producing around 300 horsepower. That sounded impressive, but the vehicle's weight of more than 2 tons made it slower than many buyers hoped. Critics complained that the SSR looked like a sports car but did not perform like one. Chevrolet listened, and in 2005, the SSR was upgraded with a stronger 6.0-liter LS2 V8, the same engine found in the Chevrolet Corvette of that time. With over 390 horsepower and an optional 6-speed manual transmission, the improved SSR finally delivered the kind of performance its looks had promised. Even with the upgrades, the SSR remained a niche vehicle. It was expensive, costing much more than a typical pickup truck, and its practicality was limited. The cargo bed was small, and while it had a unique cover, it was not designed for heavy work. Instead, the SSR was aimed at buyers who wanted something different, something that stood out in traffic and combined fun with style. One of the most remarkable features of the SSR was its retractable hardtop. At the push of a button, the metal roof folded neatly into a compartment behind the seats, transforming the vehicle from a closed truck into an open-air roadster. This made driving the SSR a unique experience, especially in good weather. It was part car, part truck, and part convertible, which is why many people found it difficult to categorize. Despite its bold design, sales were disappointing. Fewer than 25,000 units were produced in total, and the model was discontinued after the 2006 model year. However, the SSR quickly developed a strong following among enthusiasts and collectors. Its rarity, combined with its unusual styling and Corvette-derived performance, has made it a sought-after modern classic.
Number 3. The Chevrolet Vega is one of the most infamous and controversial cars ever produced by General Motors. Built between 1970 and 1977, the Vega was Chevrolet's entry into the subcompact car market, designed to compete with foreign imports and with other small American cars like the Ford Pinto and the AMC Gremlin. On paper, the Vega was exactly what American consumers needed at the time: a small, affordable, fuel-efficient car that promised modern engineering and attractive styling. But while the Vega began with high expectations, it ended up damaging GM's reputation and becoming a classic case study in what can go wrong in the automobile industry. When it was introduced in 1970, the Vega received a lot of attention and even some praise. It had clean, sharp styling with long lines and a sporty look that made it appear more upscale than most subcompacts of the era. It was also relatively lightweight, and it was offered at a very competitive price, which attracted first-time car buyers and people looking for economy during the early 1970s. In its first year, the Vega even won Motor Trend's Car of the Year award, a sign of how much potential the industry saw in it. One of the most talked about features of the Vega was its aluminum engine. General Motors wanted the Vega to be advanced and innovative, so they designed an engine with an aluminum block that was lighter than traditional cast iron. In theory, this would improve efficiency and performance. Unfortunately, in practice, the engine had serious problems. The aluminum block was combined with iron heads, and the different metals expanded and contracted at different rates when heated. This caused head gasket failures, oil leaks, and eventually major reliability issues. Many owners experienced engine problems after just a few years of driving. The body of the Vega also suffered from major flaws. Poor rust-proofing meant that the car quickly developed corrosion, especially in areas with harsh winters or salted roads. Stories spread of Vega showing rust after just a year or two, which destroyed consumer confidence. To make matters worse, quality control at GM's assembly plants was inconsistent, leading to poorly fitted panels, rattles, and other defects. By the mid-1970s, the Vega had become a symbol of disappointment. What had started as a promising small car turned into one of the most criticized vehicles in American history. Buyers who had trusted Chevrolet and General Motors felt betrayed, and many turned instead to Japanese brands such as Toyota, Honda, and Datsun, whose small cars were proving to be far more reliable and durable. In this way, the Vega actually accelerated the success of foreign imports in the US market. Yet, despite its poor reputation, the Vega was not a complete failure in terms of sales. General Motors sold over 2 million Vegas during its production run. People bought it because it was inexpensive, stylish, and heavily advertised. But the long-term consequences were severe. The Vega damaged Chevrolet's image and showed how cutting corners in design and production could have lasting negative effects on a brand. Today, the Chevrolet Vega is remembered mostly as a cautionary tale. Automotive historians and business schools often use it as an example of failed product execution and poor quality control.
Number 2, the Ford Edsel is one of the most famous failures in automotive history and remains a symbol of what can go wrong when a company misjudges the market. Produced by the Ford Motor Company between 1958 and 1960, the Edsel was intended to be a revolutionary new brand that would fill a gap in Ford's lineup between the mainstream Ford models and the more upscale Mercury and Lincoln divisions. Ford hoped to create a car that would appeal to buyers looking for something modern, stylish, and technologically advanced. Instead, the Edsel became synonymous with mismanagement, poor marketing, and unmet expectations. The story of the Edsel began in the mid-1950s, a time when the American automobile market was booming. Car ownership was increasing rapidly, and manufacturers were eager to capitalize on new trends and rising consumer spending. Ford executives believed there was an opportunity to create a new mid-priced car brand that would capture buyers who wanted more than a standard Ford, but could not afford Mercury or Lincoln models. To make this idea a reality, the company invested over $250 million in research, design, and marketing, a staggering sum at the time, equivalent to billions today. Ford also built or retooled several factories specifically to produce the Edsel, showing just how much faith the company had in the project. The Edsel's launch in 1957 for the 1958 model year was one of the largest marketing campaigns in automotive history. Advertisements promised that the Edsel would be unlike anything on the market, offering bold styling, advanced engineering, and a driving experience superior to its competitors. The excitement and hype created enormous expectations, both among the public and within Ford itself. Dealers were trained to treat the Edsel as a premium product, and the company produced massive numbers of cars in anticipation of strong demand. However, when the Edsel finally arrived in showrooms, the public reaction was largely negative. The car's styling, particularly its distinctive vertical horse collar grille, was controversial and widely mocked. Many people found it unattractive or even comical, with some critics comparing it to a toilet seat or other unflattering objects. Instead of being seen as futuristic, the Edsel appeared awkward and out of step with consumer tastes. Its size and proportions also made it difficult to compete with both traditional Fords and rival brands. The timing of the Edsel's introduction further complicated its reception. The car arrived during a mild recession in 1958, when buyers were more cautious with spending and less interested in new, expensive, or unusual vehicles. Many consumers who had been excited by the advertisements ultimately decided to buy more conventional cars. In addition, the Edsel suffered from serious quality control issues. Many cars were delivered with defects due to rush production and assembly problems. The car also featured innovative but complicated features, such as a push-button transmission mounted in the steering wheel hub, which were not always reliable and sometimes frustrated drivers. Sales quickly fell short of expectations. Ford had hoped to sell around 200,000 Edsels in the first year, but fewer than 65,000 were actually sold. By 1959, sales were even lower, and in 1960, after only 3 model years, Ford discontinued the Edsel. In total, fewer than 120,000 cars were produced. The financial losses were enormous, and the car became an embarrassment for the company, leaving a lasting mark on its reputation. Despite its commercial failure, the Edsel has become a fascinating object of study for historians, marketers, and business schools. It illustrates the dangers of overconfidence, poor market research, and excessive reliance on hype rather than consumer needs. The car also serves as a lesson in design. Styling that seems bold or innovative to engineers and marketers may not be accepted by the public. Furthermore, the Edsel demonstrates how timing, economic conditions, and production quality all interact to determine a vehicle's success or failure. Over time, the Edsel has also gained a kind of cult status among collectors. Surviving examples are rare and often highly valued, not because they were perfect cars, but because they are unique and historically significant. They are reminders of a company that took enormous risks and, while failing spectacularly, left behind a story that continues to be studied and remembered. In the end, the Ford Edsel is more than just a failed car. It is a cautionary tale about ambition, marketing, and corporate decision-making. It teaches that even with massive investment, advanced engineering, and bold ideas, a product can fail if it does not meet the needs or tastes of its intended audience.
Number 1. The Buick Reatta is one of the most unusual and often overlooked cars in the history of General Motors. Produced between 1988 and 1991, the Reatta was a small, stylish 2-seat coupe, later also offered as a convertible, that was intended to give Buick a more youthful and sporty image. At a time when Buick was best known for large, comfortable sedans aimed at older buyers, the Reatta represented a bold experiment. It was elegant, hand-built in limited numbers, and filled with advanced technology, but it ultimately failed to find a strong place in the market. The Reatta was conceived during the 1980s when American car companies were looking for ways to compete with sporty European imports such as BMW and Mercedes-Benz, as well as with Japanese brands like Toyota and Honda, which were attracting younger buyers. Buick wanted to show that it could be more than just a conservative brand for retirees. The result was the Reatta, a sleek front-wheel drive coupe built on a shortened version of the Buick Riviera's platform. One of the most striking features of the Reatta was its size and design. It was much smaller than typical Buicks, with seating for only 2 passengers. The styling was smooth and modern, with clean lines and pop-up headlights that gave it a distinctive, almost European look. Inside, the Reata was even more remarkable. It debuted with a fully digital dashboard and an innovative touchscreen interface called the Electronic Control Center, or ECC. This system allowed the driver to control the radio, climate system, and diagnostic functions using a touch panel, a futuristic feature that was decades ahead of its time. Unfortunately, while innovative, the system was also complicated and sometimes unreliable, which frustrated some owners. The Reata was hand-assembled at a special GM plant in Lansing, Michigan, which was meant to ensure higher quality and a more exclusive feel. Buick marketed the car as a personal luxury coupe, something that combined style, technology, and comfort in a small, sporty package. However, despite its ambitions, the Reata was not a performance car. It used a 3.8-liter V6 engine, which was smooth and dependable, but not especially powerful. Critics noted that while the Reata looked sporty, it did not deliver the excitement that many buyers in that segment were looking for. Sales never matched expectations. Buick hoped to sell about 20,000 Reatas per year, but actual sales were far lower, often fewer than 8,000 annually. The high price, limited performance, and Buick's conservative brand image all worked against it. Buyers who wanted sporty luxury often went to European brands, while those loyal to Buick were more interested in traditional sedans. In 1990, Buick introduced a convertible version of the Reata, which was beautifully styled and rare, but it was too late to revive interest. Production ended in 1991, with a total of only about 21,000 Reatas ever built. This made it one of the rarest modern Buicks. Today, the Buick Reata is remembered as an interesting experiment, an elegant, forward-thinking car that arrived at the wrong time and in the wrong market. Collectors now appreciate it for its rarity, its advanced technology, and its clean design. The touchscreen dashboard, once criticized, is now seen as a precursor to the infotainment systems that are common in nearly every modern car. In the end, the Buick Reata illustrates both the creativity and the challenges of the American auto industry in the late 1980s. It showed that Buick could think outside the box and attempt to reinvent its image, but it also demonstrated how difficult it was for a brand with a conservative reputation to appeal to younger, sportier buyers. While it may not have been a commercial success, the Reata remains a fascinating piece of automotive history and a reminder that even failures can be innovative and memorable.